For most of our lives, we've been told to fear sunlight, especially UV rays. But what if that was not as accurate as we've all been told, and there wasn't actual scientific data to substantiate that? Stay with me and stay tuned for this episode. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today, yes, I am talking with my friend Rudy, and he's a returning guest about UV light and how the science is actually not going to substantiate actual sunlight and human beings. Now, little caveat, nothing in this episode is medical advice, and I am still a huge proponent of practicing safe sun exposure. So please do listen to this entire episode. There's a lot of information in here, and don't just go stare directly at the sun. Don't lay out in the sun for hours. Practice safe sun exposure. We'll talk about what that is, what that looks like in this episode. So make sure you check that out. I also have a course called Harnessing the Power of the Sun that goes directly into how to safely expose your body to the sun and get all of those amazing hormonal benefits that Rudy and I are going to speak about today. Again, we're also going to talk about glasses and contacts. I've talked about this at length on other episodes and how those things can block out those really beneficial light rays. Some solutions to that. So stay tuned for the episode. And I want to thank the sponsors of today's episode. The first one is VivaRays, of course. These are my 3-in-1 glasses. As I just mentioned, keeping your circadian rhythms intact is going to be vital in this protection from the sun. So seeing the sun in sequential order and blocking artificial light when appropriate. So the 3-in-1 system I love. Base layer for if you're on devices or underneath artificial light. Orange layer is going to go on top of that. That is if you have to navigate around your house before sunrise or after sunset. We talk about the benefits of orange glasses. And then the red layer is the one you want to put on right before bed to help get that melatonin production going. You can use my code YOGI for these VivaRays to save 15%. Thank you for sponsoring today's episode. Second sponsor is going to be Optimal Carnivore. These are my go-to for filling in those nutritional gaps. It's just organ meats, and you can use my code carnivore, uppercase Y, to save over at Optimal Carnivore. I love these. I give them to my family, and they are just a fantastic way, again, to fill in any nutritional gaps that you may not be getting from your diet. So thank you again to my two sponsors. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I'll talk with you again soon. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I'm excited to have a friend of mine and returning guest, Rudy from VivaRays, here with me today, and we're going to talk more about light and health. We're going to talk about dopamine, serotonin. We're going to talk about UV light, how everybody says it's so dangerous and where that idea actually came from, and then some possible solutions for people who wear glasses, contacts, those types of things. So we got a lot to cover. Thank you for being here, Rudy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, it's always fun to chat and catch up. And, you were saying before we turned on the camera, this whole thing about light and health and our disconnection from nature, I think is just still such a major problem for people. Would you say?
Absolutely, yes, because we are truly designed to be connected to Mother Nature and not so much to technology. And we are meant to live in communion with our environment, with our skin and eyes, getting plenty of sunshine at the right time of the day, as well as our feet grounded to the earth and drinking structured spring water. Mm-hmm. And today, more than ever before, we are really disconnecting ourselves from the primarily biophysical forces of nature that actually create health. And we are plugging into an altered environment and biophysical forces that are created by human man-made and that are creating sickness and disease. So one of the primarily biophysical forces that really connect us to Mother Nature and give us the energy to power our bodies, processes, as well as connecting our biology to the daily and seasonal rhythms is light. Mm-hmm. And light is truly one of the most powerful nutrients on earth. And just like different foods that enter our mouth have different nutritional values and healing effect, also different frequencies entering our eyes have different nutritional values and healing effects, and are also uniquely important to achieving optimal health. So today, most people in the modern world have buried sunlight from their lives, and especially UV light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we live indoors in spaces that are artificially lit with light bulbs that do not resemble sunlight in any way. They are very deficient, they are very distorted, and they emit no UV, no infrared, which if we think about it, if we combine UV and infrared together, they constitute about 54% of sunlight. Okay, and those two frequencies are invisible to the eye. But I always tell people, if you can't see it, it doesn't mean that it does not impact you. In fact, it's the things that we cannot see that impact us the most. And at times in positive ways, just like in the case of UV and infrared. And at other times in very negative ways, just like microwave radiations coming from cell phones, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. And most people, when they leave their house, what do? Well, they put their sunglasses on, their prescription lenses on, or their contact, which block 100% of the UV. And they drive cars that are made of windows that block UV completely. They go to offices that are artificially lit with no UV. And then finally, they come back home and they are exposed to a lot of bright artificial light that destroy their melatonin and their ability to sleep and rejuvenate. And also when they finally go on a vacation and they have some free time outside, people put sunglasses and they cover their skin with sunscreen. So this has really become problematic. And UV light has driven our biological evolution for millions of years. So eliminating it from our lives is unfortunately causing us to devolve rather than truly evolve.
I agree. And it's so, people are so afraid of it, and when you and I both know, and we talk about this both a lot on our platforms and just different podcasts, UV light is where the magic happens in the morning. Sunrise, we turn off the melatonin, get the cortisol going in a natural, healthy way. UVA light is when we're making pregnenolone, thyroid hormone, serotonin that gets recycled into melatonin. So many essential, things for our body. And people have hormonal dysregulation. Thyroid issues are at an epidemic. Cancer's at an epidemic. Something as simple as UVA light in the morning coming in through eyes and getting on skin could be ridiculously health promoting, but we're absolutely terrified of UV light in our society. Like, why are we so scared of it? Why has there been so much fear around it, you think?
Yeah, if you talk to people, most people say that they have heard that UV light is bad. Their dermatologist or clinician recommended that they wear sunglasses that block 100% of UVA and UVB, and that they wear sunscreens that block UV. Even interestingly, we hear a lot of health experts nowadays who are starting to speak about the beneficial effects of sunlight, yet they tell people that it's okay to wear prescription lenses that block 100% of the UVA and UVB, which is kind of odd, right? So
yeah, exactly. I just did a reel on that the other day because it's a lot, I think people are starting to catch on to the benefit of sunlight and they're like, oh, it's good for us. It's good for us. But then they say stuff like, but it's okay if you wear glasses or contacts. And those are blocking out those really beneficial rays. And I actually saw a health influencer just the other day, and it was so hard for me to not say anything. She had this whole reel on the benefits of sunlight. And guess what she's wearing the whole reel?
Sunglasses.
Yes. I was like,
God. It happens all the time.
I was like, how can you do a reel on the benefits of sunlight, however you're wearing sunglasses in your reel? Like, no.
Yes, absolutely.
You're missing it. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Even at times I have conversation with people. We talk for hours about the benefits of sunlight. And in the conversation, it happens that they're wearing sunglasses. But initially, back in the days, I don't have the expectation anymore. I would have thought that as we speak a lot and as they are positively being really like reacting in a positive way about, wow, like how healthy and healing sunlight is, that they will, like it's second nature that they're going to remove their sunglasses by the end of the conversation, but it does not happen. And I think because like for us human beings, it takes us some time to really digest information and go from registering that information upon our brain merely to infiltrating it into our consciousness so that it becomes us. And another very interesting thing about people posting about sunlight yet wearing sunglasses, because oftentimes when we speak about sunlight, we are isolating one thing of the whole, such as melanopsin and how sunlight stimulate melanopsin in the morning and how morning sunlight is extremely important. But we tend to forget about the whole. So it's like studying one variable out of context instead of looking at the whole. Is literally like trying to look at the whole world through a straw and trying to make conclusions about an optimal way of living. It's impossible, right? So I think like this is where it comes from. Our science has been so used to isolate parts of the whole and try to make conclusions and behavioral protocols based on those isolated parts. But it does not work that way, because we live in a reality that is very integrative. And if we try to conclude and make behavioral protocols based on isolated parts, it will often lead to half-truths that will lead to a full lie. Which I like how
Dr.
Jack
Cruz
Cruz talk about it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes of his, is like, a half truth is still a lie. And that's the thing with UV light. I'm sure you're going to talk about it, but I want to challenge anybody watching this podcast or listening, if you're on the audio format, to send me a study that shows sunlight, the big ball up there in the sky, and cancer on humans. Please send me that study, because the only studies I have been able to find, and trust me, I have looked really hard, have been where it is narrowband UV light studied in a lab. And those are the correlation with the cancer and the UV and all the damage. Now, I'm not telling anyone to go sunbathe for 6 hours a day if you're a Fitzpatrick skin type 1 or 2, I'm probably a 1, even after all my sunbathing. I'm not telling anyone that the sun cannot damage your skin if you don't overdo it, if you don't practice correct circadian rhythms, correct viewing sunlight and exposing sunlight in sequential order. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that there is literally no study that I have been able to find, and I'll challenge anybody listening to this to find one for me, that actually shows sunlight and human beings and cancer in the same study. To me, I haven't found one. Have you?
That's a great point, Sarah. I was actually for a long period of time looking and investigating, and I found that a lot of the studies that have created tremendous fear about UV were conducted back in the 1980s. And one of the main studies was actually done on monkeys at the College of Virginia in 1981. And the result of this study is highly questionable, as they do not pertain to reality. What they actually did, they tranquilized the monkeys, and their eyelids were wide open with lid clamps, which fully dilated their pupils.
Wow.
Okay, and so they were not able to blink. And blinking is this natural mechanism that we all use to adjust the different brightness of light and protect our eyes if light was to be too intense. And beside this physical abuse, they shown an intensive bright light with extremely high levels of UV, which does not represent the balanced trace of amounts of UV that we get from natural sunlight.
Right.
And as you mentioned, the UV was narrowband, and it was shown in isolation from the regenerative frequencies like the red and infrared that we continuously get from sunlight every time UV is present. So yes, abnormal amounts of UV light shown on dilated pupils in an abusive way like this will definitely cause harm. There's no question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I love the analogy by Dr. John Ott, because he says giving too much oxygen at birth can blind the baby. However, it would be foolish to think that we need to avoid oxygen at all costs. And
Right.
it's literally the same kinds of studies on laboratory animals that were very abusive and repeatedly burning the skin and the eyes of animals that led to thinking that UV light causes cataract and skin cancer. And it really surprises me so much that in the 20th century today, with the unfolding of science, many intelligent people still fall into this polarized, unbalanced way of thinking about nature. Again, it's like trying to look at the world through a straw, and it does not work that way.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's very dangerous, I think, the way that people look at nature, and incorrect. And I think since 2020, a lot of people have started to discard narratives, maybe people that were closed off to looking at certain things now have had a bit of a paradigm shift, and they say, oh, okay, well, that was incorrect. So what else is incorrect, And all of these things about the sunlight, I think a lot of people they're open to learning about and understanding about, but there's still just so much fear surrounding UV light, and that it's harmful and that it's bad. So for anyone listening, again, what Rudy and I are basically trying to drive home is that the studies that exist on UV light are really not done in a natural way on human beings. They're not done using the sunlight, because the sunlight contains UV light, but it also contains that red and infrared light, which is protective. It's protective. It's kind of like a sunscreen, actually, and therapeutic. And so we don't have absolute concrete data. And again, don't be stupid. Protect yourself. If you're a Fitzpatrick one, if don't look directly into the sun, I don't think that's necessarily a healthy thing to do. We have to still exercise caution. However, I think that we need to start to move away from some of these very fearful narratives, because I think that it's causing a lot of people to have terrible health. I just did a post on Instagram that said, crappy food, fake food, fake light, and, fake beauty products, cosmetics are like, basically putting everything on a credit card. Eventually you're going to pay for it. And people in the health industry get the food and the personal care products. They get that right pretty well, I think. Definitely some fighting and opinions on what that looks like, but we know not to do the processed foods, most of us. But I think that most people are missing this part about light and health, completely missing the boat. And as you mentioned, cancer, diabetes, obesity, like so many health problems you can basically isolate with circadian rhythms, would you say?
absolutely. One thing I do believe, Sarah, is that we are just coming to a realization about how deeply powerful is the biophysical forces of nature, such as light, magnetism, and frequency.
Yes.
And for so long, we have believed that biochemistry is the boss.
Yes.
Whereas truly biochemistry is it's the assistant that is taking its signal from the biophysical environment. And if this biophysical environment is optimal, then it's second nature that our biochemistry as an effect will become optimal and will become balanced. But as long as we are bathing in an unbalanced biophysical environment, and as long as we continue to think unbalanced thoughts, which are frequencies as well, we continue to create unbalanced effects, which we see in unbalanced biophysical or biochemical reaction in our bodies that we call sickness and disease. And literally, if we start looking through the lens of Albert Einstein's law of relativity, E = mc squared, we start realizing how miraculous nature is and how mysterious light is. Because truly light creates reality. And when light slows down, it's continuously being transformed into things of mass, creating our material world and creating our physical bodies. And it's literally how our bodies use this miracle of nature to continuously manufacture all sorts of chemicals, neurotransmitters, and neuromodulators. In fact, all of our neurochemistry that literally create our own reality and enable us to make a model of ourselves in space and time, influencing the way we perceive ourselves, which we call our self-image, and the way we perceive others and the world around us. So to relate this to UV, for instance, when morning UVI hits the aromatic amino acid tyrosine in the eye, this light slows down and it converts tyrosine into dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is that important? Because dopamine is this miraculous molecule that allows us to have the motivation to go after what we really want in life, our aspirations, right? And it makes us sit up, pay attention, help us to plan, think outside of the box, and see the bigger picture in life. And most importantly, it allows us to overcome danger, and it allows us to overcome the resistance to the difficulty that arise on the glorious path of achievement. Okay. And today we are in this very, very weird spot where this neuromodulator that has forever served to help us thrive throughout evolution is actually causing us a ton of grief, sadness, puffiness, lack of motivation, and primarily lack of purpose. Okay. And actually, if I take a step back and I reformulate this, it's not dopamine that is causing this. It's our modern lifestyle that is lacking the natural resources that build our dopamine in a sustainable way, like natural sunlight and like UVA. And this same world that is oversaturated with traps that are socially engineered to compel this overconsumption and addiction. Things like sugar, things like processed food, artificial light from our phones, notification and digital apps, pornography, drugs, and so on.
Yeah.
Right. And when we do not allow Mother Nature to build up our dopamine in a sustainable way, we will be much more vulnerable to falling to those traps that are socially engineered to keep us really seeking for more and to keep us thirsty for pleasures that are residing outside of ourselves.
And the whole, you tell me what to do. I can't think for myself, that I think a lot of people have fallen into these days. It's a little terrifying to me how people they'll look at somebody who's an authority figure and take their word for it. And, I don't want anyone to take anything I say word for it. You can research me. You can go search for the studies that I reference. You can go look at those. I want people to really start to learn how to think and research things for themselves. Again, don't take my word for it. But this is part of this crisis, I think, of us having a deficiency of these light frequencies, is that we have very low dopamine and we're so addicted to our phones, and we want to just be told exactly what to do, what time to do it, this, that, and the other. Here's this brilliant doctor who's very well spoken and charismatic, and he says that I can wear my glasses and my contacts outside and it's not harmful. So it must be true.
And
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, I want people to know that it has not always been the case for me, where I was able to think for myself, where I was able to relate to nature's processes. In fact, I was the most desperately miserable guy in my circle. I was completely depressed, completely disoriented, and so addicted to so many of those social traps that I just mentioned. And it wasn't until my inner light was unfolding up to the point where I realized that I have the power to recreate my own reality by tapping into nature's processes and by rebuilding the foundation that allow me to thrive as a human being the way I am designed to thrive. I'm here to love. I'm here to give love. I'm here to serve, right? And oftentimes when we are so overconsumed by outside things and by the continuous desire to seek physical pleasure, we disconnect from our hearts, and we are forever seeking more and more physical pleasure through outside things, and forever seeking to satisfy our physical senses and our physical body in ways that make of us selfish human beings. And we are designed here to come and serve and love. We are not here to be selfish and to be forever satisfying our physical senses. And
Yep.
I think this is where another very important molecule called serotonin comes into play, because also UVA light provides the energy for the natural conversion of tryptophan into serotonin. And we really must build up our serotonin in conjunction with dopamine to truly achieve happiness, because serotonin actually induces this sense of inner joyousness, happiness, and peace with who we really are and what we already have, beyond this continuous need to seek pleasure from outside sources. And when our dopamine is hijacked all the time by those artificial sources, and when we are lacking the natural serotonin that nature allows us to build up, we start living this physical existence and forever living to satisfy our physical desires. And again, I mentioned that there has been a time in my life where I literally lived to satisfy my physical senses, to party, to take drugs, for this sexual urge, or for this chocolate cake that will give me that, pleasurable dopamine hit. But then as I start unfolding and as my inner light kept growing, it became clear to me that life is not about continuously being a slave for pleasure and for outside things. It became clear to me that pleasure and happiness are literally two different things. And pleasure, for instance, is very short-lived. It only lives for a few minutes after we take the dopamine hit from the blue light from the phone or from the sugary cake. Whereas happiness, it lives for much longer. It lives for years. And unlike pleasure, happiness cannot be achieved through substances, whereas pleasure can be achieved through substances, through sugar, and through different outside conditions that we become addicted to.
But it's never enough, right? As someone who's a former addict, and I have years of sobriety now that I had to work hard for, there's never enough. We have a saying, one drink is too many and it's not enough. And that's, I think, how this loop that so many of us in society get pulled into is, we get the likes, we get the comments, we get the enjoyable food. We just stay in this like eternal loop, and it's miserable at the end of the day. It's just miserable. Yeah, it's not sustainable. It's miserable. There's never enough. And so, part of my journey with being connected to nature was being on this, like, I'm going to be super strict on this diet and do everything right. And having some great health improvements, definitely. But still, at the end of the day, starting to struggle a little bit with my mental health, having fertility challenges, all of that. And it was like, once this simple thing of nature and sunlight became integrated into my life in a way that I could do it. I do live in a city. I have a family. I'm required to be indoors certain amounts of time of day, but it's doable. It is something that absolutely everyone could do. It was absolutely life-changing for me. And so ever since I've had that experience, as I'm sure with you, it's like you want to share it. You want to help people with this because it doesn't cost anything. There's no diet plan that you have to buy. There's no supplements that you need. It is 100% free and available to all of us. And so, I'm completely with you on that whole, this is a natural way for us to have a better life, right? Just to keep it simple. It's just that.
Absolutely. And
yeah,
the happiness and the connection that we often get from living a balanced rhythmic lifestyle that resemble the balanced rhythm of nature literally trumps out all of the things that might disturb that rhythm. And the beauty about this is that it becomes effortless. It does not require this torturing willpower to do
Right.
things that you're not enjoying doing. It becomes second nature. The flow and the energy that start flowing into your life makes it second nature, that it becomes a way of living, which I absolutely enjoy and love.
Absolutely. And I'd love to touch back a little bit with this whole topic of UV contacts. I think everyone can pretty much agree you don't want to be wearing sunglasses when you're trying to do your sunlight exposure time. I hope you're enjoying today's episode with Rudy. I just wanted to pop in quickly to thank you for watching the show. Thank you for leaving me a like or a comment underneath this episode, as well as sharing it out with a friend or loved one who might benefit from this information, especially if they wear glasses or contacts. We are going to get into that in this episode in depth and some possible solutions for them. I also have a link in the show notes to my courses. If you need a little extra help beyond the podcast, I try to give out as much free information as humanly possible. And then I have some extremely affordable courses if you want help with your circadian rhythms and how to navigate that in a modern world when you have kids, when you work in an office, and even when you live in a northern latitude. So there are ways around these things, and I have courses for that. So check those out down in the information section. And a quick little shout out to my sponsor, Upgraded Formulas. These are their magnesium capsules, but I'm really just more a fan of their hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation for helping you get to the bottom of any mineral deficiencies that you may be experiencing. Now, 80% of us have some sort of a mineral deficiency. And then when you start to eliminate carbohydrates, they become more obvious. So the best way to find out about your particular mineral deficiency is going to be a hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation. You can use my code YOGI or YOGI12 to save over at Upgraded Formulas. Thank you guys again for watching. Thank you to Upgraded Formulas for being a sponsor. And make sure you hit that like button and leave me a comment. Let's get back into the conversation with Rudy. Exposure time. But I have a lot of listeners. And like I said before we even turn on the recording, I get this question maybe 3 times a week, maybe more, depending on the week and the content that I've posted, about glasses and contacts, because that is one thing. I don't think people realize that because of all of the science about UV light being dangerous, that most glasses and contact lenses are going to block those rays out. So even if you're trying to establish these great circadian habits and go outside, if you're wearing glasses or contacts, you could be negating some of the beneficial effects of that outdoor time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And it's also great to start making the differentiation between early morning sunlight, which is absolutely beneficial, because those rising blue and green light frequencies actually increase the healthy rising tide of cortisol in our body, which makes us feel alert, energized, and motivated, and prepare us for the day. And at this particular second, there's a cellular timer that is set that will dictate when the very important, powerful hormone melatonin will be released about 12 hours from this period of time.
Yes.
So morning sunlight does not produce melatonin in our eyes. The first rays of the sun actually set the timer of when melatonin will be released later in the evening. Whereas the arrival of UVA, depending on where you are in the environment, about 60 to 90 minutes after the first rays of sunlight, is what allow us to produce melatonin in our eyes by providing the natural energy for the conversion of the amino acid tryptophan into melatonin. So those are two different things. The timing of when melatonin will be released is controlled by the first rays of sunlight early in the morning, but also the amount of melatonin that is manufactured in our body and in our blood is actually controlled by UVA frequencies. So when health experts speaking about the circadian beneficial effects of sunlight tell people that it's okay to be wearing sunglasses and prescription glasses that block 100% of the UVA and UVB, I do believe that we are missing a big chunk of the equation. And oftentimes people wearing prescription and contact lenses, I've been telling for years that they need to remove their prescription and expose their eyes to natural sunlight. But also, a lot of times it's not very practical, because some people cannot see well when they remove their prescription. And also, it's a lot of thinking that every time they need to be outside, they need to remove their prescription, which is fine. And I think everyone needs to get into the habit of doing this, because it will start naturally to unfold and start to feeling good. However, I'm very excited to be sharing about this latest technology that we were able to achieve with the help of the optometry lab in British Columbia. Finally, we were able to create and engineer lenses, prescription lenses, that are designed to allow 60 to 70% more UVA and UVB to pass through the lenses, so that people could harness the power of sunlight throughout the whole day, whether they're wearing their prescription on or not.
I think that's wonderful, because again, the people that reach out to me, they really do depend on their glasses to get to a place where they can see the sunrise or get some UVA light. And they get very disturbed, because they're like, if I don't have my glasses on, it's not safe. I could fall, I could hurt myself. And, and I haven't really had much of a solution for them. I just kind of say, well, can you wear what you need to wear. And then when you get to a place where you can sit down safely, then take them off. But some people, they want to go for that morning walk, and what a better time to get that piezoelectricity, moving through the body, make that structured water, getting that UVA light. All of those things is a really wonderful thing to be able to walk during that time. And so you guys now have engineered these prescription lenses. So if somebody is listening and they have a prescription, they can send it in to you guys and have these lenses made specially for them, correct?
Absolutely. And here's the beauty of it. On one side, we spoke about how UVA light builds up our dopamine in a sustainable way. But on the other side also, we know that artificial light exposure, especially after the sunset, destroy our ability to produce melatonin dopamine the following day. And it really affects our motivation, our cognition, and our memory. So the beauty of this system is that on one side, you have your prescription lenses engineered to allow more UVA and UVB, so that you could build up your dopamine in morning sunlight. And on the other side, you have the clip-ons that are combined with this same frame that allow you to take control of your artificial light exposures throughout your whole day and block the wrong frequencies of light from entering your eyes after the sunset, so that you can protect your dopamine at night. So now you have one frame. It's called 4-in-1, because the base frame and prescription allow you to maximize healthy light outdoors. And you have the 3 clip-ons for the indoor environment that allow you to mitigate the harmful effects of artificial light.
Wow. So they can just have the base layer prescription glasses for when they're outdoors. There's a layer they can wear if they're on, like, let's say, screens or devices, and they're not outdoors using iris like I'm doing, right?
Yes.
Everyone's always like, why aren't you wearing blue blockers? I'm like, I'm outdoors and I have iris on the computer. Otherwise, I got the glasses on. So those are like day lenses they can use, or if they're indoors in an office environment with like a lot of fluorescent lighting, because I think a lot of people are like, well, how do I wear blue blockers in the first place? So that's my recommendation, is if you're in an office, in a coffee shop, so a grocery store, though I can't even go in the grocery store anymore without my day lenses on. So that's the day lenses layer. And then orange, and you can tell me if you would do something different, but I tell people to wear orange, after sunset, especially in the winter, because it's easier to navigate around through the house with the orange layer on. And then I do the red, 30 minutes to an hour before bed, because those you want to just be more settled. That's when it starts to, tell pineal gland, let's do this melatonin thing, get to bed, some of that restorative sleep, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And speaking about the daytime blue blockers, you definitely don't want to be wearing those outdoors Even
No.
Sarah, if you're sitting in front of your screen with no iris, let's say, with the amount of brightness that you're now getting from sunlight, it overrides any artificial light that you might be exposing yourself to from the screen. So never outdoors, only indoors when the artificial light is dominating the natural light entering the space that you're sitting in. Also for the orange and the nighttime lenses, that's such a great way of using them. I love using the orange in the evening, anytime I'm still active, doing things, driving, going to the mall, enjoying a gathering with my friends. And as soon as I'm ready to completely commit to go inward and to do nothing and to start preparing for a restful night's sleep, and that's usually about 1 hour and a half before bed, I move to my nighttime glasses, which block 100% of the blue and the green, and they decrease the brightness by 15 times, which really like help me to, it's a signal to my body that, okay, now it's time to do nothing and to really start preparing and going in with.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been someone that's been able to tolerate taking a melatonin supplement, thankfully, because I think those are just terrible. But if I try to take melatonin, I have horrible nightmares, and it just doesn't do anything good for me. But I've heard taking melatonin can make you very sleepy. I always say putting on the red layer is like taking a melatonin supplement for me, because once I put them on, my body is like, oh, I'm so ready for sleep. And
Exactly.
yeah, and the thing with the orange ones too, because we're heading into winter here. We're recording this the end of September. It'll probably be released in the month of October. You know, our days are getting shorter and shorter. And so there are going to be people that listen, and myself included, I'm about to have a newborn, that they have to be up and moving and around the house before sunrise. And so that's when I utilize again the orange lenses, because I need to see what I'm doing around my home, but I'm not quite ready to have that bright light signal because it's not out naturally outdoors, right?
Yes.
And so I'll keep those orange ones on until sun comes up. I can go outside and actually get that natural signal from the sun to start to have that natural rise in cortisol for alertness and sharpness, and allow my body's hormonal system to play out naturally, rather than getting up in the morning, turning on a bunch of bright lights and having a spike in cortisol, which, you know, I think is and dopamine too. It's a huge problem and is leading to more and more hormonal dysregulation than I think a lot of people are willing to admit or understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about the orange lenses, because it has actually been shown that if you expose yourself to very bright light while wearing the orange lenses, let's say before the sunrise, or for people who are working nighttime shifts after the sunset, what this does, let's say in the morning before the sunrise, instead of like melatonin crashing and you get this spike of cortisol that is shocking to the system, it happens in a more transitory way, in a more orderly manner, where it's not shocking to your system, and where you are starting to gain more alertness, and at the same time, like melatonin is slowly decreasing in the body rather than shocking your body with this intense bright light first thing in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with the morning routine that I really emphasize with people, because, you know, one of my big focuses in, you know, my platform is just talking about leptin resistance, which is just such a huge problem for people. And leptin is a circadian hormone. One of the first things that can start to dysregulate your leptin is abnormally high cortisol levels in the morning. And you know, what do most people do in the morning? They grab their phone, which is a signal that it is summer solstice noon,
Yes.
first of all. So your body is like, whoa, I got to catch up and make a bunch of cortisol. Then they run to the kitchen, have the coffee, you know, skip the breakfast, have the coffee first, and you got even more cortisol. And so, you know, a lot of people struggle with, again, hormonal imbalance, leptin resistance, which causes them to not be able to lose weight or even to gain weight for some people. And if you start to fix these really simple things in your morning routine, throw your orange glasses on, only look at your phone if it's 100% necessary. Try to avoid that because that's also going to mess with your dopamine levels as well. But
Yes.
try to keep your morning a little bit more restorative if you can. I know a lot of us have kids and jobs, so we have to do our best, but control what you can, right? And I think those orange glasses are a good way to step into your morning in that gradual way without having all these huge, sharp rises in cortisol.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about like food and hunger level as well,
Yep.
this UVA light also and morning sunlight builds up the protein POMC, which is derived
Mm,
from 241 amino acids. And this can become also melanocyte stimulating hormones, which is a group of hormones that are produced in the hypothalamus, in the pituitary, and in the skin, and in response to UVA. And not only it's important for melanin production, which protect your skin from burning and give you this beautiful tanning and attractiveness, it actually suppresses your desire to eat, and it helps you to have a much more balanced relationship with food and have a healthy food appetite, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's important too, because a lot of people have with leptin resistance, they do not have reliable hunger signals. And so, they try to just skate through on these stress hormones and try not to eat until 1 or 2 in the afternoon a lot of the time. Again, elevated cortisol levels. And so they're not hungry. And I'm like, yeah, well, you kind of want to be hungry in the morning,
Yeah,
it's a sign of health.
yeah.
And to have a regulated appetite throughout the day, not to get to this place where you're 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, you're ravenously hungry. You have this big giant meat,
And
it's not the natural thing. It's a popular thing to do right now, but it's not natural at all.
and part of it is also that their ghrelin is kicking in at night, right? And
Mm-hmm.
their leptin is suppressed at night, which means
Mm-hmm.
that they are munching on a lot of food late at
Mm-hmm.
night and really suffocating their organs, because
Yeah.
their organs are not meant to be digesting this food late at night. They're much less efficient at doing this, and it takes much more energy and much more time to be able to assimilate and digest this food that we eat later at night compared to if we were to eat this food in the first half part of the day. And what happens
Exactly.
then, that they wake up and their organs are still not ready. They're still in a stage where they're like, please give us some space, give us some time. So to ask someone to have a meal while they're still living in unbalanced, unrhythmic lifestyle where their life is almost upside down, where they're
Mm-hmm.
feeling more wired and stimulated at night when they're supposed to be winding down and rejuvenating, and they're having their biggest meal at night when they're actually supposed to be burning fat and
Yes.
and detoxifying and healing. It becomes very, very difficult. So the key to this is to realign the primary signal, which the first most important signal is light, and then comes later the timing of your food. But when you start getting the timing of your lights right, that morning sunlight that we're speaking about, that UVA light entering your eyes, and then blocking artificial lights at night, eventually within 3 or 4 days, your body
Yeah.
will reconstruct a new rhythm. But this time, this rhythm is not a chaotic one. Rather, it's based on nature's processes, on thousands of years of evolution between this paradoxical exchange between light and darkness, which, as we
Right.
mentioned in the first part of the episode, we said light is one of the most powerful biophysical forces, not only because it gives us all the energy to power our body's processes, but also it's because it allows our biology and our metabolism to sync into the daily rhythms and into the seasonal rhythms.
Absolutely. And that is the basis of health. And getting close to time here, but I think that that's really the take home message for a lot of people. We get so wrapped up in having the perfect diet, having all of these things, eating the perfect fat protein ratios, all of that, that we forget about the fact that when we become out of sync with the sun, with nature, with these very basic, simple things, that's when the body becomes dysregulated. And it doesn't have to be so complicated with the diet with all of these things that people are searching for and spending oodles of money on.
Yes.
It's a lot more simple than that. It's just we have to figure out ways to integrate these things into our modern lives. And so definitely excited about these new lenses that you guys have coming out, because I think that's going to really solve a lot of issues for a lot of people that listen to the show. Where can people find out more about those, or just more about you and kind of your work, what you're doing these days?
Yeah, so you can find out more about our lenses by visiting our website, www.vivarays.com, VivaRays. And you can also have access to our free e-booklet, like The Key to Mastering Your Sleep and Energy, which have phenomenal, very simple action steps that everyone can take, so that they could master their sleep, have more energy and focus, and be more productive during the day. And also, we share a lot of our educational material on our newsletter, so feel free to subscribe, as well as on our Instagram. So if you want to connect with us, please send us a message with all of your questions. We're happy to connect and answer all of your questions.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure I link all that in the show notes for everybody to take a look at and check it out. And thank you again, Rudy, for being here today. It's always awesome to chat. I'm sure we'll have many more chats in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
You're welcome.